What is up, everyone? Welcome to week 2 of Look Who's Chalking. I am, in fact, here with you and with Gary, which means I didn't win the millionaire, unfortunately, because if I do, I probably won't be here the following week unless it is to brag. Gary, I know you weren't heavily involved week 1. I'm assuming that's a good thing because it was a really weird week where we just talked about it was the lowest amount of touchdowns scored in 10 years or something like that. It was a low-scoring, weird week 1, and when you have Mac Jones as your number 2 quarterback and none of the quarterbacks that you'd expect, no Lamar, no Justin Herbert, you imagine it's going to result in a weird lineup winning the millionaire.
Yeah, as Marla Daniels from The Wire says, you cannot lose if you do not play. And that was the case for me last week. Didn't play any Millage tournaments, played some 3-max, single entry, lost a little bit of money, was fine with that. Was at a wedding. I think I drunk built 2 of my 3 power sweep lineups, so I just pissed away $300. But, that's what you do when you're having fun at one of your best friend's weddings.
Yeah, man. Especially when you're married. When you're married, the drunk texts now have morphed into drunk lineups because obviously you're past the drunk text stage, and now it's the drunk lineup.
You want to get a load of this? So I was in this wedding. I had a lot of fun, drank a lot, get back to the hotel at, 2 in the morning. We have a flight at like 8, or I have to leave for the airport at 8. Apparently, according to my wife, I don't even remember this part. I get on the computer, start putting in my picks, start putting in lineups so I get back to the hotel. And then I set an alarm for 6:30. And I turned to her and said, I got to do football stuff in the morning. And I didn't remember any of that at all. She's like, I'm like, why is my alarm going off? She's like, you said you got to build. You got to do lineups.
Like, I would like to know who was in those blackout picks. I want to know the blackout lineup opposed to the other lineups.
Yeah, I was like, I do not. I was like, I can't believe that was my drunken state at the very end of a long wedding weekend. Was that I'm going to wake up in 3 hours from now to make lineups. But no, I'm excited to have a full week of normal schedule, normal-ish. We got Jewish holidays this weekend, but not letting it.
Which one? Which one they rolling out there now?
It's Rosh Hashanah, New Year, Jewish New Year. So that's
Happy New Year.
You don't have to fast, so that's good. So I'll be I'll be well nourished at least when making fantasy lineups this weekend. So yeah. The fasting comes in, I think, a week or 2 later with Yom Kippur.
I would like for them to conduct some studies on nutritional balance, sleep schedules, and who knows, maybe sleep deprivation and severe hunger. I don't know. Maybe it triggers a certain part of the brain that actually thinks outside the box or something like that. Who knows?
I would think so. And anytime I've won, at least in football, basketball is a different beast because you're just grinding in those 3 hours. But at least anytime I've won in football, I've been very sleep deprived and I built all night. So yeah.
Seriously, man. I was just thinking about this past weekend. I mean, forget about making all the right picks and all that stuff. Like, you have to survive so many different things, like injuries and a whole assortment of things have to stay in check. Like most of these other sports, like I don't watch a ton of basketball, but from when I watch, it doesn't seem like people can just get injured every single game. I know injuries happen, but for the most part, when you submit a lineup, they're going to play unless something relatively bizarre happens. Just the ruckus factor with this NFL. I mean, just this past weekend, Dobbins, Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, so many people who probably a part of so many lineups get knocked out. Some of them return, some out for the game. It's the true battle of the bastards. It's a true Royal Rumble. It's like pure mayhem, but I guess it will make the thrill of winning an NFL tournament that much better as well.
Yeah, the difference is you're 100% right. Like when you enter your lineup, your risk factor in football is 40% higher than your risk factor in basketball when someone just goes and twists an ankle and is going to be out for the game. The difference is that 2 hours leading up to lock for basketball is the most chaotic you can get. And that's why if you're actually trying to play basketball DFS in any kind of serious manner, you have to be locked in to starting lineups and injury news because one scratch or one starting lineup change impacts the entire way you build your entire slate. So it's really those 2 hours leading up where someone's just ruled out or injury management or rest management or just the coach makes a starting lineup change we don't then say, the Knicks decide they're not starting freaking, Quentin Grimes one night, then, maybe who knows who's going to be in the rotation at all, right? So it's it's just those 2 hours before that you need to be attuned to the news, make sure you have all your notifications on. But after that, it should be smooth sailing. There shouldn't be any kind of crazy surprises with rotations or players. But for football, you 1 o'clock hits and pens down, best of luck as far as injuries are concerned.
Yeah, fortunately, I won't be having to worry about those basketball lineups anytime soon. But we've had a common theme since the start of Look Who's Chalking. And, we're always looking for those lower percentages, plays, this, that, and the other. But we've always said, and by we, I mean me, week one duds always look for those week two studs, for those, especially those guys. And there's a whole litany of them this time who screwed everyone last week. The Ponzi scheme, no more T. Higgins. He just reminded us that maybe just we're going to show you what a little 1 week Ponzi scheme is. And the 0 catches on like an absurd amount of targets. Joe Burrow, absolute nightmare. Herbert was pretty mediocre, got 1 rushing touchdown to somewhat salvage. It's not like either of those receivers. They scored like 50 points and nobody somehow had a big fantasy day. So there was a lot of disappointment to go around. Lamar Jackson only had 2 designed runs all game long. And I know part of your thing about you got to spend up on quarterbacks. You need that rushing floor. So now is he just removed? Because he didn't look so great in a pick your receiver, spread it around type of offense. So I don't know. This is a week where, in my opinion, we're going to be looking for some of those stacks that maybe will draw some lower ownership because they're still very high priced, and the classic scare factor.
Yeah, if you go look on DraftKings, and Alex, if you just want to pull it up just so that people can see the top 6 quarterbacks this week, right? Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Justin Herbert, and Joe Burrow. Mahomes and Allen weren't on the main slate, but every single one of those players you could say underachieved, right? Mahomes had receivers drop balls that would have been touchdowns left and right. He would have had a much bigger game, probably gone on to winning. Only had 20 points. Could have been a 30-point game. Josh Allen was also what happened Monday night in New Jersey, and now he gets a home bounce back spot in Vegas, coming off of 13 DraftKings points.
Is there a chance, by the way, the further he gets away from Brian Daboll, the more he's looking like the original Josh Allen?
I think your theory has some legs there. I also just think the Bills might be a little bit overrated in general. I think there's just some legs there too. But I do still think we know that the spike weeks are there for Josh Allen. You get a great spot against Vegas coming home here. I love Josh Allen. It's probably my favorite of that top 5 or 6 group. Him and Joe Burrow, man. I love Burrow on the bounce back. I'm a little bit scared of the calf thing. Like, man, this is as bad as a Joe Burrow game as you will ever see. And all the credit in the world to Jim Schwartz and the Browns defense, who had like a perfect game plan in Cleveland. Just dominated that game, almost as perfect as Dallas's game plan against my Giants. But it was, he was completely thrown off, could do nothing. I mean, T. Higgins had 8 targets and a goose egg. I don't think one of those catches was passable. One of those targets was catchable. So, I mean, really huge bounce back spot for Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and Joe Burrow. But all these guys, Herbert, I said this on the First Look show today. I'm starting to get a little bit worried. And I don't want to read into a 1 week sample. And I still want to think that, hey, this Kellen Moore addition is going to be a good thing for them ultimately. But I always said this last year, since Brandon Staley's been there and since Justin Herbert's been there, at least since his rookie year, we do not get ceiling games out of this guy. I don't know what it is, and at least since the shoulder injury, so it's been a full year now. Like, we're capped out at like 22, 23 points, and this is a guy that should consistently be putting up 30 plus. I don't think he had 30 DraftKings points once last year. And so I think we'll get that this year, and I want to keep going back to the well because we know the talent is there, and we expect this team to be a higher pass rate over expectation this year. But, man, I'm starting to get a little bit worried that, like, we're just capped in that mid-20s with this guy, and, like, the balance in the run game and Eckler's upside is just – I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it, but I'm starting to get a little scared there.
I just refuse to believe it. I mean, something is I'm going to put that more on the coaching because when I see him,
he's amazing.
He's not hesitant. He makes all the throws. Like even in that last comeback, it's like when they finally let him throw, put a perfect pass over a couple linebackers and then under the safeties into a perfect zone to Mike Williams, like 25-yard pass on that final drive. He has the ability. He's got a cannon of an arm. They have the weapons. But for some dinky reason, this play calling, they don't stretch the field enough. So this Kellen Moore thing, maybe they said that the game plan of the Dolphins was to just make them run it as much as possible, show them all the fronts to entice them to run. I'll give you 1 week on that. But Tennessee, they are great against the run, and they're vulnerable through the air. And he better be chucking this week.
I'm into it. I'm into Burrow. I'm into the Herbert bounce back. I'm into the Fields bounce back. I think Tampa Bay completely over.
I'm a little worried about
Minnesota.
Burrow simply because
Yeah.
he was a
Right.
slow
Yeah.
starter last year after missing that training camp. I know he had the abysmal week 1 against Pittsburgh, but he still wasn't right for a few more weeks. I believe they played Dallas and then the Jets, but there were no massive weeks. Those came later on. Although, you would think a couple years into his career now that he would be able to have a big game in their home opener after such a dismal one. He cut the idiotic hair. I think that's a good start. Today, he cut that Larry Moe and curly part down the middle that I had in 6th grade, and I literally tried to bleach from my mom's photo albums. He got rid of that. That's definitely a step in the right direction. If you're going to be Joe Cool, you can't be rocking the part down the middle from 97. Now that's gone, and I have high expectations after something. He's that guy now who's going to be at Nobu, Malibu, taking pictures with Livy Dunn. He's Joe Cool again, and that's a good thing to look forward to if you do want to take Burrow this weekend.
I think that's a very good point. And to one where there's so many strong quarterbacks on this slate. Hey, maybe you'd rather just go to Jamar Chase as a one-off play because I think Chase might be the best receiver on the slate this weekend. And
if Patrick Mahomes, by the way, I mean, this is Patrick Mahomes here. It's one of those things that we were reminded about last week when Christian McCaffrey went absolutely off. Oh, yeah, there's a guy who can score a shit ton of points, who's pretty incredible and has been for a long time. You just forgot about it. And then, it's the Steelers, maybe.
I agree with that. I think we were underrating CMC, but no one anticipated that kind of volume. I mean, him and Elijah Mitchell on base stuff were splitting last year. It was the pass down work CMC got. I think Mitchell had 5 total touches. They were up by like 25 points, and CMC was still getting carries. So if you're going to get that kind of Christian McCaffrey workload this year, which, man, he must be super.
Well, Gary, if they gave Mitchell an 8th carry, you know what would have happened. He's done for 6 weeks.
Speaking of, the one person I'm really upset is not on this main slate is Jamal Williams, because you talk about bounce back spot. That guy got like 45 touches. I think he had 14 yards on 45 touches. Now he gets the Panthers on Monday night.
I will just admit to you, in my life, the only other time I was equally as shocked in football was when the Kansas City Chiefs, after scoring every single drive in the first half against the Cincinnati Bengals, put 3 total points in the second half and lost in overtime. How could, and they scored every drive on the Bills the week before. They're waxing the Bengals and then nothing, and then they just lose. I truly believe they
came back and won the Super Bowl last year. I completely forgot that 2 years ago they ended that way. You're right.
I mean, I remember just thinking, I can't understand what I just saw. How is that possible? And that's how I was feeling watching Derek Carr not check the ball down all game. My mind was blowing because it's usually Reed, check down. And he was doing this thing where before I panic, read what was going to Juwan Johnson. And in the past, he would never do it. Would go right underneath. And I was panicking. We still hit the over 1.5 receptions by a hair. Yep. But that was pretty goddamn terrifying.
It was terrifying. And you know what? Credit to him. And I still think we're going to get more checkdowns than not. But I think that offense, they built it around him. And he trusts those weapons. I mean, Olave, great receiver. Really good receiver. Michael Thomas looked fine for what he was, which at this point should be like a good possession receiver. And that's what he was. He had like 8 for 70. And then this Rashid Shaheed guy, man, he's good at football. Like, he's straight up good. So they have 3 really good receivers. I like Juwan Johnson as a tight end. Like, their weaponry is there. If they built this offense around him, which is maybe it's not the dump offs, but it's kind of those intermediary throws, which all 3 of those receivers are good at, because we know he's not going so deep, but all 3 of those receivers are good at. Like, and they have a cake schedule. Like, that Saints team's going to cruise that division, I think. Like,
don't underestimate Carr's ability to ruin a game, which he almost did last. Just that brutal pick to Tennessee. He almost lost, and Tennessee played pretty horribly. So they squeaked out of that game.
You know what? Let's stay on quarterback here, because there's no reason to talk about the Saints. They're not on the main slate. Although 2-game Monday night slates, those could be fun. The Saints probably, I think are after maybe, I don't know. The Saints will be an interesting one. Regardless, we're not talking about that. But I like everyone up top at quarterback. I think all of them are good. And this is a really strong quarterback week. You mentioned I really like to pay up at quarterback, and I still do. But I've also mentioned, I was slowly mentioning last year as we went on, the pricing on quarterback has changed on DraftKings to the point where you need 40-45 from those guys for them to be optimal. So we saw it from Justin Fields a couple times in the middle of the season last year. But ultimately, we were seeing lower price quarterbacks be optimal because those guys still have ceilings of 28 to 30, which at 5,600 say, or 6,600 for Tua last week. If your 8K guys aren't getting 40, 45 plus, that 28 from your 5,500 is going to be optimal. So I'm starting to change a little bit.
Oh, like Mac Jones?
Yeah, but Mac Jones. Like this is a week where there's a ton of awesome plays. Everyone from Trevor Lawrence through Mahomes, which are the top 7 guys I think are excellent. But you can definitely consider guys on the low end as well. And my super, super ugly play of the week, the ugliest of them all, is Ryan Tannehill on the other side of the Chargers game. So ugly. It couldn't be uglier. But he's 5K on the nose. We talked about like in Herbert on the other side. They're back home in Tennessee. You couldn't get a better bounce back spot. We just saw. I'm not saying he's Tua and Tyreek. It's not. And this Titans offense is not that Dolphins offense. Not at all. But Stoneman 5K basically is what you're going to get Stoneman for a starting quarterback. And we know that Ryan Tannehill has vultured rushing touchdowns from Derrick Henry consistently over the last 3 years. Like those bootlegs are going to be there. He's not going to go 0 pass touchdowns with 3 interceptions again. At this point in the back of his mind, I think he's probably thinking like, oh shit, if I play like that again in a game where that was like my job's on the line, we know he could be serviceable fantasy wise. Like this is my punt large field tournament quarterback play. So if I'm spending all the way down, listen, we like the game environment. It's not bad. Like I'm giving it a shot.
I can't get it. There was something about Tannehill. He looked like a guy who said, I'm ready to get benched. I remember old Tannehill. I stood by him. I'm like, yo, don't worry. This guy, he's gone toe to toe with some of the biggest names, and he's won some playoff games against really good. He's beat Lamar when Lamar was the MVP. They went up to New England and beat Brady and Belichick when that wasn't easy. I mean, he's been very serviceable, but that guy that I saw against the Saints looked like a guy ready to get benched this year. I would be a little bit too scared, especially when that looks like a Henry game.
It does. But what Miami showed us last week is that this Chargers defense doesn't look good in anything. I don't want to overreact too much to week 1, but they didn't look good against the pass or the run. But you're right. The Chargers run defense, they've basically given up for 3 years.
McDaniels is also. There is a chance because they were winging it around against most teams last year during the second half when they really got into that groove with Tua and when they were really clicking. And now this is the second year with all those weapons and whatnot. To me, yes, the Chargers defense was crap, but don't be surprised if many defenses find themselves, on the back foot against the way that Miami plays. And especially with Tyreek Hill, man, this guy is just something else out there.
So I'll give you my lowdown on the quarterbacks then from that point. So I like all the top 7 guys. I think all of them incredible ceiling. Like, you can make a case.
How about Lawrence? Lawrence, I mean,
Lawrence is fantastic here. Like, you get the discount from Mahomes, so you could do weird things, right? You could do skinny Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, Kelsey bring back, or you could do double.
That's what I was thinking.
And you could because the Kelsey Mahomes stack is so hard to get to. You can get your exposure through someone that's $1,400 cheaper or whatever in Lawrence, or $1,600 cheaper. So yeah, I think Trevor Lawrence is great. But if you're trying to save money, like the mid tier is weird this week, right? Because there's all these high ceiling guys on the slate. I don't want anything to do with this Jets Cowboys game from a quarterback perspective. It's like a 39-point both.
How about the matchup between last year Detroit and Seattle?
So here's my only issue with it. Goff, where he's priced at 6,200, with all those high ceiling guys on the slate, you need like a Joe Burrow game. You need a Joe Burrow game. You need the 400 yards, 4 touchdowns out of Jared Goff.
So where'd they put Geno after that bad week?
So Geno is 59, so you save $300, which I think is okay. But man, that looked terrible. You don't need fully like the same thing out of Goff with that 300, but like you need still 303, maybe 350 and 3, and that's in play. Or like 250 and 3 with that 40, like that chalky 40 yards on the ground type of thing. Those 4 extra points.
You know what, Gary? I think the way you described that, I really feel like it could help people build lineups where if you actually said, here's a bunch of names, you need 350 and 3. That will get you to the millionaire. And if there was a matchup game, who is doing 350 and 3? I think that would help people build lineups. I swear, like if there was a little cloud that floated above your DraftKings lineup that says, choose a guy who can get you 300 50-3. I just feel like you'd approach your lineups differently if you knew those exact things that you were looking for.
I like where you're getting at, and maybe I'm going to use a little exercise like this for my leverage column that I write for Fridays. I write a GPP leverage column for ETR, and like I always look for like kind of unique ways to approach tournaments. And I think this is a great slate to try out a little exercise like that because, you know, those 7 quarterbacks at the top that we mentioned, there's a huge ceiling case and a bounce back case. There's either a big ceiling case, a big bounce back case, or a big ceiling and bounce back case on every single one of them. So even though, you know, we're looking at 8K at the top and 6,700 on the bottom, like those, it's hard to get out of that tier. That's why I mentioned Tannehill, because if you're not attacking that top, this mid tier is a little bit suspect. I like Anthony Richardson, you know, and as good of a debut as we could have imagined, because we knew the rushing would be there. We did not think we were going to get 37 pass attempts and 65% completion through the air. That's very encouraging. My concern here is they raise him from 56 to 63. And can Houston push at all, or is this just going to be an ugly game? Like 40.5 points, whatever. You know, he is a guy that is one of those classic, you know, we're getting 18 points out of Anthony Richardson on most weeks. Like there's a floor, there's a rushing floor. We're getting that. But, you know, I mentioned all those other guys on the slate. Now he's into that mid 6K tier. He's between Geno and Goff, or right around there, or right after Goff. Like you need 20.
He's in no man's land. He's a 20-year-old.
Exactly.
He can't go. He can't get into bars, and people are saying like you have to be an adult. You're not 18 anymore. But he can't even get into places. He's a lingerer. You're in no man's land
with this tier, right? Like Purdy, Stafford, Jordan Love, up through Anthony Richardson. This is like a no man's land tier. It's like the quarterback dead zone this week. So I'm a little bit worried about it, despite the fact that I understand the need to pay down a quarterback. The thing is, Lawrence and Burrow at being sub 6, 7K, like they're cheap enough. Even Herbert at 7K, like they're cheap enough. That's that $1,300 savings that you get from Allen and Mahomes, like that's big. So I'm now that we talked through this exercise a little bit more, I'm probably 90. If I am 150ing, I'm probably 90% of my lineups I'm spending up in that top 7 group. I'll sprinkle 10% for Anthony Richardson, Geno Smith, maybe, you know, a couple of my Tannehill dart throws, Daniel Jones dart throw, just because we know the ceiling's there, despite what that offensive line looked like. You're going to Arizona.
Yeah.
No, you know, so
I know you've always said a couple things. Don't worry too much about quarterback percentage because it's always kind of,
I don't worry about that.
It's always around the 10. But this
need the right
week,
guy. You need the right.
I'll almost guarantee you, maybe not of the Men's Warehouse variety, but a different kind of guarantee that, like a Vince McMahon, I guarantee that it's going to be spread around everywhere. I'm looking at all these names. There's good discounts available, the medium guys, and then some people are going to want to take the Josh Allens and whatnot. I bet you that ownership is all over the board. So
I agree.
I'm not really, whoever you personally like, I would say fire it up because
my guess
all these guys are going to be out there.
I think we just ran our first ownership on ETR, so I'm curious what we have. But my guess is that Trevor Lawrence will be the most popular. Oh, no, Josh Allen's the most popular.
I was going to say, but my guess would be Josh Allen.
Yeah, Allen's the most popular by a wide margin. He's the only
that year, 2 years ago, I think people, they'll never let that go. Josh Allen will always live as a king in everyone's mind. And I think those spike weeks that
even if he is turning out to be a less, not as good of a real life quarterback as we thought, he's still going to be a strong DFS option week in, week out.
Yeah.
Like he's just always going to have some ceiling games. You know,
when he's on his game, he's going to be nasty still. Like my opinion isn't changed.
Herbert's like incredible to watch from a real life film perspective. Josh Allen is super fun to watch. Like even when he's not pristine, like that guy just like, he's a bulldozer. When he just decides he wants to take off with the ball, hold it for too long. Like he's not Mahomes with his like spectacular highlight reels, and he's not Herbert with his precision, but he's like somewhere in between with like his just, I'm reckless and I'm fun and I'm very talented. So
yeah. And when it all comes together, he looks like, Superman. So
yeah, for sure.
And that definitely can happen. Last week left a bad taste in their mouth, and usually that at home opener and stuff like that, that's when you tend to throw beatings. We've seen them play a string of a couple bad. When you go back last week, bad game against Cincy, bad game against Miami, bad game. It's been a while since they've had a dominating performance, but if there's a team you can do it against, probably it is James Garoppolo and those Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh yeah, I would agree. Before we move on from quarterback, the only thing I would say is like usually I try to keep my quarterback pool a little bit thinner. Like I have a hard time this week. I think all of those top 7 guys make it. I think Geno gets a sprinkle. I think Richardson maybe gets a
This is you're feeding the fish at the pond. You're feeding the fish at the pond. Everyone's getting flakes
already, which is like, I don't love that, but that's what we're dealing with on a 12-game slate when there's like good spots everywhere, So it's, what are you going to do? It is what it is.
Yeah, last week I told you, I'm like, it's easy actually for me to stay away from a lot of these games. I just hate these matchups, and
the one that scares me a little bit is this Baltimore-Cincy game. Just like, hey, can that AFC North be a little bit crusty? But Lamar is also, we liked early season Lamar for a long time. Cincy did not look good, and it's a bounce back spot. The case against him is he's on the road. If we like Burrow to actually push here, though, like this game can go nuts. So like you could really see an argument either way, to the point where I'm scared to totally leave him out.
I think my needle's going a little closer to Crust. We saw Baltimore Crust against Houston. We saw Cincy Crust. We saw Cleveland Crust. They looked better.
My needle's going a little bit closer to Crust.
Yeah, of course. Like a picture the egg scale on Willy Wonka, good or bad. And I've already told you, anybody who listens to me, any of my shows, I have tiers of crust. There's slight crust, full crust, pure crust, and the absolute ceiling, which is this is like, absolute zero in Kelvin, where, actual matter just stops. It is the epitome of crust.
My God, we're doing physics class here or whatever. This is amazing.
That's right. Well, that's the perfect time to let you know that's the epitome of crust. It's crust's absolute ceiling. If you've hung out with me, you've never heard me say that. It's only known by name, but it can never truly be reached. Pure crust is a bad level. So just to remind, slight crust, full crust, pure crust, epitome of crust. And those are the levels of crust.
So where does this rank on the scale?
It's in between full and pure.
Full.
I think it's full, but like I said, it's leaning closer to pure crust. I mean, what I saw, and I know you many times you should delete it, but it's the damn division thing. However, God damn it, I know Burrow, one of the teams he always plays great against and especially Jamar Chase, plays great against these damn Ravens. So
I always used to say, like, take stands on these kind of things, right? So if you're scared of this game, pick a side, especially if you're playing one, like Andy, you're playing the power sweep, or you're playing a 10 max or whatever. Don't play lineups. Don't play one Lamar lineup, one Burrow lineup. There's so many great quarterbacks. Just play a Burrow side. If that's how you feel.
Yes.
Don't, and maybe that's what I try to do in my lineups this week. Like maybe, what I try to do, like when I'm hand building I'm building an optimizer, if I want to like take out these Lamar lineups because I don't want to put my combinations in with Lamar, maybe I just do Burrow, cap it out like 8% of my lineups or whatever, try to get around the field. And then what I'll do is like, I'll hand build 5 or 6 Lamar lineups into my tournament build just to make sure I have those little flakes, as you mentioned, but I'm not like bogging down my actual build with those. So I am picking a side, but hedging with a handful of hand-built lineups, if you will. So
I gotcha. For me, I am going to probably choose that Burrow side. I mean, the Lamar side, I have reasons to stay away. Don't like that there was only 2 design runs. Yes, we saw Flowers get 9 catches or 9 targets. I know he like 9 for 80 or something like that. Bateman was the third receiver. Beckham didn't really produce that much, but then they're going to reintegrate and reintroduce Andrews into the offense. So is he going to lock in on Andrews again? And then, there isn't that rushing.
And that's the other thing. Your stack options are not as clean as Cincinnati side.
Oh, they're filthy.
Zay look good. And, they were manufacturing touches, but, Andrews coming back shakes things up a little bit. The other thing is the Bengals have a 25-point team total. Let's go to our good friends at eatdrinksleep.com. The Ravens are all the way down to 21. Yeah, that's a huge difference. 4 points, 4 full points in a 46-point total in difference. I mean, teams like the Broncos have a higher team total. So Vegas is clearly on the Cincinnati side. Just, if you're looking for tiebreakers on which side to pick here, Burrow, the risk is Lamar has the rushing upside. They just lost Dobbins. Maybe some of the goal line packages are a little bit more in favor of Lamar. So I get it if you want to be on that side, but, in Cincinnati, crusty, pure crust, as Andy would say, division game, I would pick the Burrow side, I think, as well.
Why don't we take a look at some running backs? I could usually sniff around the edges on those and kind of find something where I feel like I can kind of wiggle a deal, save you a couple dollars here. We got the Eckler injury kind of up in the air. Very hard to stay away from that Saquon Barkley indoors in Arizona, a defense he should be able. I mean, God, and they're going to want to get right. They said they want to use him more in the passing game this year. I mean, the Giants looked like garbage, and we could talk about that another time.
Wow.
I just truly feel like last year was just the opposite of a series of unfortunate events. Just they hit like a massive parlay where they won every close game and everything kind of went right. And to me, I'm just watching. To me, I'm just watching the Giants that I remember from 2 years ago and 3 years. It's just exactly what they look like to me.
You could say Jones the last decade, dude. It's been terrible or more. It's been like 12 years straight since basically.
Yeah, and I forgot what you told me about when they can get out of that Jones deal, but I hope it was sooner rather than later.
I think it's after 2 years. Although I will say, I mean, impossible to take anything from that game whatsoever.
I agree.
Offensive line performance that they've had, which is crazy considering how bad they've been for a long time. He did not. I'm not saying Daniel Jones looked good. He did not look good. But he also had 0 seconds to do anything. I'm with you on Saquon. This is the guy I think I'm really interested in, and get him a little priced down because of the down week. Jacobs you get correlation with Buffalo. His ownership is actually not as high as I would have imagined, but we still had 22 or 21 touches out of him. It's just he ran bad, which is fine.
I'm a little worried that he came so late to training camp that this guy's really only been around. I know you scoff at that, but nobody did well.
You're just worried about volume. Like if I'm getting this role in a game that I want to attack anyway, just give me correlation. If it's a secondary stack with Josh Jacobs and Stephon Diggs, if it's Josh Jacobs as a bring back on an Allen thing, because like the thing with Jacobs is, and I know it's not check down Charlie Carr anymore, but Garoppolo is not that different. Like if they're playing from behind, I want them even more. I want those 8 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah.
Whatever. So I really like Jacobs coming down $800. This is a guy that was the number 2 overall running back in fantasy last year.
Yeah, true.
In fantasy last year, and they have no reason to not give him mega volume and 90% snaps. Like that doesn't happen. And now he's playing on the tag. Like
that's true.
I don't think he's going to be this cheap again all year. So and if we're getting him at sub 10%, which is early ownership, not again this Thursday.
And that's the sign. That's the sign. I don't know now if the ambulance or cop siren that we just heard is like a weird like sound the. I don't know if that's the sound the alarms.
Gary's an idiot.
No, but it also kind of sounds like a jackpot. Like
wee. Right, yeah. Like we hit a slot. Yeah. Yeah, right.
All right, so why don't we scroll down a little bit and see one guy that I saw, and you know me, I'm going to try to save you a couple of shekels here and there. Yeah, we're going to have to scroll down a little bit more, just a hair. We have a guy at the bottom of your screen that you see, supposed to be one of the workhorses in the league. Things didn't go too well for Dameon Pierce last week, but when you look at this matchup at home against Indianapolis, he had a very similar week 1 last year where it's like, oh my God, he has the opportunity and capability in a game that is going to be close to really put up some numbers with a lot of work. Maybe not full Jacobs work, but a pretty hefty amount of work. Now, I guess we just got to recheck the updates with the offensive line, who was missing a couple of pieces going into the season. Yeah. But he's somebody who, a couple weeks a year, this guy puts up pretty big numbers. And at 5,600, I don't know. For me, I'm going to sneak him in something.
No, he's a great play. I think he'll get a little loan because of how cheap he is, but I don't think it'll get outlandish. Far too cheap. And, a little bit of concerns with usage in week 1. They used all 3 backs, including Mike Boone, former Viking great, Mike Boone in the 3rd down role, which, we thought we were getting a 3-down roll out of Pierce. So that was a little bit concerning.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just easing him in. They knew they didn't have much of a chance in that game in Baltimore. They want to keep him fresh. Now they go home. They didn't ever really compete in that game, but they know he's their most talented player. They also maybe thought, hey, this guy has no chance against this in back of this offensive line, which could also be true. Offensive line's in shambles right now. I don't know how they are coming into next week, but he is a guy that I'll be using plenty as well, just because role should be better, and price is too good. Matchup very strong. So
yeah, last year week 1 he was splitting with like Rex Burkhead. They usually come to their senses pretty quickly when evaluating, his talent level and whatnot compared to the other guys. He can help them. And he had several runs last year where I don't memorize all like the Pro Football Focus rankings and whatnot, but I'm pretty sure that he was evaluated as one of the top runners in the league. So somebody just at 5,600 to keep on the radar, along with Kenneth Chalker, who went wild in Detroit last year, if my memory serves me correctly. Or was that Penny? God damn it. I think Penny might have got hurt in that game, and then that's when Chalker took off. This is just immediate like memory that I'm going off of. But
I think you're right. This tier in general, I think is what you're getting at. Like the low 6K to mid 5K range is definitely the spot you want to be if you're not spending up. Like Chalker, David Montgomery's right now projecting as the most owned player for us on the slate.
Really?
So, yeah, I mean, super underpriced. Like, there's no.
I unnecessarily texted you that he was a slug on opening night. I was just bothered watching him. I just texted you. I go, this guy's a fucking slug.
And he is, right? Look, 21 for 74, only 3.5 yards carry, but found the end zone. They trust him. What I think is really interesting, especially if he's going to be super owned, because there's no world when you look at a usage report that Jahmyr Gibbs should be, $500 more expensive than David Montgomery. But Gibbs is still going to be the guy in the pass game. Campbell comes out with the quote that they're easing him in. I'm a little bit
just like they eased in DeAndre Swift last year. They eased him in and eased him out.
This is the guy that this regime picked at 12 overall.
True.
I think there's more of a role for this guy. I think he's actually going to get a little bit of ownership still because people are attacking this game. But if we're looking at 20% for David Montgomery, probably like 8-9% for Jahmyr Gibbs, it has to be largest fields only. So I wouldn't make this play even in the power suite probably because there's too many good running backs. But if I'm playing the lotto, this is the kind of play that I would take some shots on. So.
All right, why don't we go to a Gary special, which is finding us, because we've given a lot of pretty high-priced players out there. The Gary special is these bunker wide receivers. Like, I think, like, for example, I could say, hey, did you see that Darnell Mooney got a good amount of looks last week? Yeah, he got more than DJ Moore and everything. He's pretty cheap down there. Oh, yeah, you see Nico Collins? By the way, we've been talking about that guy for years. We've been talking about that longer than the A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith conundrum. And I consider these my bunker guys, and they're at 4,800, 4,700. You find guys, these guys are the richest in town compared to them. These are sheiks compared to the guys that you find.
It's my job to write the cheap wide receiver volume article for Establish the Run. We don't have this week the same way in week 1 that you get those stone.
Good. I'm sick of you coming out with these bunker picks. Darnell Mooney and Nico Collins. It is.
We do have to talk about this guy. I mean, you saw what he did week 1, right? Puka Nacua, 15 for the Rams. I mean, this is not fluky. You have 15 targets. That is not any NFL game. Is not fluky. So he's legit. But they priced him up from 3K to 4,900, and I think we're projecting for like over 8 targets on ETR. Like, that's serious work. But he's going to be one of the most owned players on the slate, so it's not like any kind of sneaky play anymore. I'll give you my favorite large field tournament play. I was doing the first look show, and I couldn't believe I was thinking this, but it's true. It's true. My absolute favorite in the biggest lotto in the millie is Kadarius Toney. And it's actually not very close. So I know Kelsey's coming back this week, but everyone's attacking this game, right? It's the only 50-point over-under on the week is KC Jacksonville. Everyone's going to play Calvin Ridley. People are going to play Zay Jones. People are going to play Etienne. A lot of people play Kelsey. A lot of people play Mahomes and Trevor Lawrence. No one's going to this bum that just dropped 4 passes and had a pass right through his hand that would have turned for a pick 6. But you know what Andy Reid said, and I believe him? That they're going to play him right through it. That's how he believes in getting people right. He gets open. I think he's a schmuck, by the way. I'm a Giants fan. I think he's a complete schmuck. But the guy knows how to get open, and they don't have good receivers on this team. So they want to keep gadgeting up. They gadget up a play for him in the red zone. They gadget up all these little plays for him out of the back. Goal line. Like, this is a guy. He had 5 targets. Could have been more. You're never going to see a worse game than that. No one is going to sniff this guy after that game. This is like, you have to have stones to do it. Play some Kadarius Toney this week. I think it's gross. It makes your skin crawl, but I mean, come on.
Dude, I agree with you. Scanling gets 2 deep shots a game. Sky Moore looked off. Like, this isn't even last year where they can say, all right, well, just get it to Schuster. There's truly nobody. And if Patrick Mahomes is going to throw for 329 yards, even if you want to give 100 to Kelsey, that's a lot of yards. And go ahead, give 20 to this running back, 20 to that. There are still plenty of yards to go around. And I weirdly agree that Tony I don't like the guy either. There are plenty of guys I don't like. I mean,
you don't like me. We've been doing the show with me for 3 years, so it's here.
I hate it. I've hated Justin Fields. I hated, I've hated a whole ton of people. But there have been times where I played Justin Fields, and this is a time. The only thing I wish is that he was a little cheaper. Like when I see Nico Collins right there, and his 11 targets from last week.
Nico's it was a freaking great play. These Titans receivers. You don't have to play Tannehill to want to play Treylon or to play Hopkins, although Hopkins missed practice today. Scares you a little bit. But does make you like Treylon. If Hopkins misses, Treylon would be a very popular play because there is not that many cheap receivers under 4.5 this week on DraftKings. Those 3K guys are really fun.
Okay. So, all right. I'm happy because when I was looking, I was like, is Gary really going to come and say, oh, yeah, well, I have this flyer? Because I'm looking and I couldn't find
well, there is one guy that I think is going to end up being a good play, and that's Hunter Renfrow, who's under 4K because there's no way Jacoby Myers, after getting completely lit up, is playing this week. And now Devontae Adams enters injury consideration this week. I think he'll play.
I'm sorry. There's one right there. I believe Brandon Cooks is not going to play. And, that Andy name you've just heard way too much. And out of curiosity.
In my article that I'm publishing in the morning for Cheap Wide Receiver Volume, I got Gallup on my wait and see list based on the Cooks information because he's, it's fully dependent on Cooks. Yeah, I agree with you.
Out of curiosity, when a guy's 4,100, how many points roughly are you looking for from them?
I mean, you want to probably in the largest field tournaments, you want to 7x. You want to get to 28 points, probably 20, 27, 28 points, in the largest field. So in the power sweep, if they get to 22, you're feeling good. 22, 23. Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
or just break 20.
It can happen. He's obviously going to need a touchdown.
It could definitely happen. And that's the thing with Renfrow, right? If you go back 2 years ago, I mean, I know this regime hasn't used him at all, but if there's no Jacoby Myers, if you get 7 catches for 80 yards and you just luck into a touchdown at 3.9, you really only need 23 points or something like that. You can get there.
This regime really does hate him.
They hate him. I don't love the cheap guys this week under 4K, really. But there are some of these mid 4K guys. Nakua is going to be owned. The thing is, DraftKings, they're weird. They overprice some people. Like Tyler Higbee last week had no business being 4,800 when prices were out 3 months ago, as Levitan was saying a lot this week. But then, they're so slow to react to raise other people's prices, right? Why is Dotson still 4.9? Why is Nico Collins 4.8? Why is Romeo Dobbs coming off a 2-touchdown game 4.8? Why is Zay Jones 4.7 when he's running every 2 receiver route and still had 7 targets, coming off a great year last year and found with 5 for 55 and a touchdown? So these guys are underpriced to the point where you don't have to go bargain hunting. You could do that at tight end if you want, So it's
you know what? Then this is a lot to absorb. I think what we should do then, it's a good starting point when building a lineup. Let's see what Joe Blow Public thinks. Let's see if he's made any improvements on his absolute. Let's see if he addresses the disaster. And if this guy, if Mr. Blow triple stacks again, I think that's the last invite. Because if you're learning that much nothing, then I think you gotta go. Can we bring on Mr. Blow here?
What's up, nerds? It's me, Joe Blow Public, back for week 2.
Is he working in the middle of a factory in Pittsburgh? Where is this guy? Is this on his lunch break? I feel like he took off his hard hat, came off to the side to make this lineup.
I came back from the hospital because I was so sick from my week 1 performance with the lineup I gave you guys. Now, I did have some other lineups, okay? A couple of them cashed, okay? A couple of them a little high up. We cashed $28 last week, folks. Big stuff on that $5 entry.
You hear that? Oh, no. I talked to a bunch of girls. It was just a different night. Yeah. When I went out, I talked to everybody there. Yeah. Not the ones that you guys saw, but yeah. $28 for Joe Blow.
All right, let's just go after it, okay? No analysis, which is what we want. You want no analysis. That's not my job. I'm Joe Blow Public. All right, here we go. Let's start it off. QB. This week I'm going with Anthony Richardson versus Houston. I like what he does with his legs. I think he's got enough weapons. I think Houston's terrible, so let's just go with that. Why am I giving you analysis? I said I wasn't going to give you analysis. Not that that's really analysis. All right, so we're going with Anthony Richardson as quarterback. Running back, we're going Travis Etienne against Kansas City. The other running back, we're going Joshua Kelly against Tennessee with the Eckler news and whatnot, his concerns. We're going to go with Kelly. Looked great last week. Sorry, no analysis. Michael Pittman is my first wide receiver. We're going to just do a pair of guys. We're not going to do a full stack this week. Perhaps the stack wasn't the full best idea last week. Maybe the full stack wasn't where it was at. All right, so we're going to go Michael Pittman.
Single stuffed Oreos, Mr. Blow. That's what we're looking for. Single stuffed Oreos, all right? We don't need those triple stuffed that you had from last week. So, all right, he went with the quarterback from the kind of dead zone, but I got to be honest, this is infinitely better start than last week.
It's a much better start.
It's not the end of the world.
Go ahead.
I was saying it's a much better start. The Kelly thing is like it's in flux. We have no idea if Eckler's playing. Tennessee's actually not Tennessee. Sorry, Tennessee actually a very good run defense. So it is what it is. But this is fine so far. ETN, Chris Jones back in the middle, but these are all fine tournament plays. Richardson, the weird thing is I look at him as more of a cash option this week in that mid tier. But let's keep seeing what Joe Blow has to say.
Yeah, I understand not the best, but just compared to what he was running out there with Everett and Williams and this guy, and much better so far.
I think that makes sense. Quarterback to wide receiver. All right, my other wide receiver is going to be Calvin Ridley. I saw a 67.5 yardage prop for him. I like that. I think he's going to go over that. So Ridley's probably got money on the over anyway against Kansas City. Let's go with Calvin Ridley. Throw him in there. I'm going back to Deebo Samuel. Okay, he had 11 points last week. We're playing against the Rams this week. I know I could go super chalk and just throw Ayuk in there after he had 35 points. Mad I didn't have Ayuk last week in any lineups. It would have been big, but what are you going to do? So Deebo Samuel against the Rams, we know he's a threat on the ground. Know he's a threat in the air as well. Tight end, we're going to go with Dalton Kincaid from Buffalo. I don't trust the Raiders defense really, and I saw enough from him last week where he's at least a good dart throw. Flex position, we're going to go with Mike Evans versus the Bears. The Bears look terrible. Evans had a great week last week. He had 10 targets. Or maybe 11. Let's just go with Mike Evans. Let's go with this. So now we're going to round it out with Tampa Bay on defense. Tampa Bay defense against the Bears. Again, I don't trust the Bears to do much on offense. So that's the lineup, folks. Okay, Joe Blow Public Week 2 lineup. Let's run it back again for the listeners and the viewers. Quarterback, Anthony Richardson versus the Texans. We're going to go running back Travis Etienne versus Kansas City. Running back Joshua Kelly versus Tennessee. Wide receiver Michael Pittman versus Houston. Wide receiver Calvin Ridley versus the Chiefs. Wide receiver Deebo Samuel versus the Rams. Tight end Dalton Kincaid from the Bills versus the Raiders. Flex Mike Evans versus the Bears. Defense rounding out the lineup for Week 2 on DraftKings Millionaire. Tampa Bay versus the Bears. Let's fare better than finishing a millionth, which is what I did last week. I think I had 92 points. We're going to cross 100 this week, folks, at least. Oh, boy. No, we're crossing 150 this week, all right? We're going to cross 150, and this married idiot in his basement is going to cash. I'm going to cash. We'll see you on the other side.
So
much better. There's still plenty of
much better
public elements to that lineup, which is good. We need him to keep the brand intact for sure.
I love it. I mean, I do like the random Mike Evans in the play. He just random.
You know what I like even more than that? Than that he went to the Bucs defense after that. I thought I'd make a rule in every single one of my lineups that I can't have an offensive player with the defense because the defense needs to score a touchdown. The game script doesn't go the other way. But that's why he's Joe Public, and that's why we like it. The Mike Evans in there. Like, good. It's good stuff.
So he had maybe I could take some things from there and just say he has 2 Jacksonville Jaguars. He has Etienne, and really now it's very possible that they can rack up points in that game.
Yeah, that's
but if you're going to trust 2 of them,
a quarterback from one of those teams, rare. When you do it, which I don't like to fully eliminate it, but it's fully dependent.
Like Ayuk and McCaffrey last week.
Yes, which is rare though, right? And Purdy was almost perfect with them. Purdy was almost perfect with those guys, but Tannehill. I'm looking at Dolphins quarterback. Tua was so dominant that he overtook Purdy at only 600 more or whatever, or 800 more. But Purdy, if you had a Purdy lineup with CMC and Ayuk, and you threw like Ridley and a couple pieces there, you're probably winning a tournament. So even though Tua was perfect, that was viable. So usually you want a quarterback if you're doing that. What I do like to have, or what I allow 2 position players without a quarterback from either team in the same lineup, it is usually in a smaller field type of entry with 2 guys with higher ceilings, or somebody's just so heavily discounted because of an injury or something like that. So if Eckler is out, for example, maybe I would let Kelly and Mike Williams be in the same lineup with nothing else to do with Herbert or whatever. That's something I would allow. Also, the other time I'll allow it is if like there's a tight end that's like 2,900 or 3K, then I'll just make no rules around him and I'll just let him go because of the salary saving. And so if he ends up, if Michael Mayer down the line is 2,800 and he's a great play, but Devontae Adams also is a great matchup, maybe I'll just let that happen. But usually I have rules around those types of things.
What do you think about Kincaid in that tight end? I mean, he was lining up all over the place. He seems to be their third receiver because they were running considerably less 3 and 4 wide receiver sets because they had 2 tight ends that they were putting out there. He drew a couple targets. Obviously, it was a game where it's going to be tough to get anything going offensively. Is he somebody you could sneak in an Allen stack, or could that be chalky? Or
I don't think he's going to be chalky.
I don't think so.
Fly play. Yeah. I mean, he's basically their slot. He's basically the slot receiver that you get to play a tight end, right? He's like in that 11.5 personnel. What I would do in like something like Joe Blow's lineup is the way I would switch that up is I keeping Kincaid in. I would get up from ETN to Josh Jacobs, and you get natural correlation. You're getting away from ETN Ridley double in there without any of the quarterback. And then you just change your defense up a little bit, whatever. And, it's only $200 more, I think, from ETN. ETN gets Chris Jones this week. Chiefs not as good of a matchup. Who knows? But, that's kind of what I would do if I was playing Kincaid in that lineup. I'll give you this. Joe Blow Public's lineup, not the worst thing I've ever seen. It's serviceable at the very least.
And I'll take one little piece of his lineup and ask you a question. And if you approve, maybe that's how we'll build our own lineup. And that is he included Deebo Samuel, and he rightfully brought up that Brandon Ayuk had a monster week. He's kind of been projected to have a monster year based on his trajectory and that offense and how he played with Purdy last season. He plays Deebo. They're going up against the Rams, who they just notoriously crush. The Rams, who now in people's opinion, you see, if you have Stafford. If I'm talking to you 1 week ago, you're saying they're absolutely one of the worst 3 teams in the league. Lowest win projections. They're an awful team. But now because we saw that, are we magically supposed to think that this is Rams 49ers? Am I sick to want to do a Purdy stack with Deebo and another player like Kittle, who was under the radar, who could easily have a big week any one of these weeks because he was a little limited going into week 1. Played the whole game. I'm sure we'll get a healthy Kittle. So a team who's literally 1 week ago considered one of the worst against a team in San Fran who you saw can run up that score. You think maybe a stack without Ayuk, even if you want to use McCaffrey because he is one of those weird running backs?
I want McCaffrey in the stack. I think if I'm doing it, I want McCaffrey in the stack because Debo's going to be chalk, folks. Debo's going to be chalk. He's 5,600, far too cheap. He fits into everything you want to do. DraftKings is pricing way too tightly still. So Debo at 5,600 is a value when you look at ceiling projections. People love jamming in the ceiling projections. I think this, again, let's keep in mind, this is the first ownership we're getting. This is Wednesday night. I think we just released it at ETR. We have Ayuk at like 8% and Debo at like 20%. That'll get closer as the week goes on because, the hand builders are going to click on Ayuk after that week. But still, if we're looking at 20%, one of the most clicked on receivers for the early week, and Debo, he'll be somewhat chalky. I would be fine with a Purdy stack. But again, a lot of quarterback options this week. If you go Purdy, what I would say is just stick to that. If you're going sub 6K, that's your guy. Go all in. Make your selection. That's the cheap guy you want to go with.
Oh, well, I got news for you. That is. Don't challenge me. That is my cheap selection this week. Brock Purdy is my cheap selection. And mark my words, if that game was remotely closer, he would have kept chucking in the second half of that game. They threw an absolute beatdown in that game. And the Steelers defense, I got news for you. It's a little bit better than the Rams. And we know how Shanahan has crushed McVay almost every single time during the regular season. I could see them running up the score, beating the crap out of them. You want to build a lot? Are you against?
The Rams defense is terrible. No, the Rams defense is terrible, man. Like the Rams, they did well last week, but that was all in Geno being looking awful. The Rams have Aaron
Yes,
Donald,
that's what I'm saying.
No one else. That defensive personnel is garbage. I'm fine with it. The thing with that is it's actually going to be a quite chalky game because Puka Nacua is going to be so owned. McCaffrey's going to be owned. Debo's going to be owned. Ayuk's going to be owned. So like figuring out ways.
What do we do, Gary? In these situations, we sneak points where we're out the side door. That's what we're going to do. You can take Purdy. Yes, you're going to have to eat some McCaffrey chalk. Put Kittle in there instead of the other two.
Yeah,
I
like that. That's how you started off. Yep. You ignored both receivers, basically. You go CMC, you go Kittle. And then the problem with this is now you need a bring back here. Nacua is going to be the guy.
You know what I have to do. You know what I have to do. I don't want to, but we're going to do it. The one deep Van Jefferson touchdown. So he's a scumbag. I don't want. Oh, wait a minute. There is a guy I put most of my fob for this week who played 78% of the snaps before that game got out of hand. And he also ran like 25 routes or something like that. But you're never supposed to take two running backs in the same game, correct?
No, it's okay. I mean, my bigger concern with it is the matchup for Kieran. Like the Niners defense is amazing. Like that, I'm more concerned. Like if I'm taking a bring back here, I do want it to be a pass catcher. So listen, I'm okay eating Puka chalk if you want.
Do you need to bring back? What if they beat the shit out of them and that offensive line looks like last year where they got nothing?
Here's the problem. I guess you don't, but some of the best value on DraftKings is still coming from that Rams, whether it's chalk or not. Puka, Atwell, Van, Higbee 2, all under 5K still. So this is a very condensed route tree. We saw Atwell and Puka have a lot of success. My issue with Van is we thought he was going to be the clear wide receiver 1 without Kupp. He's looking like the clear wide receiver 3. We also have a big enough sample that he just might not be good. So, I think, I'm assuming Puka is going to be super chalk, right? We're looking at 15%.
God damn.
That's a lot. Tutu, we're looking at only 8. It's 200 less. Guy earned targets. Like, that maybe that's the guy you do just for a little bit less cumulative ownership. And then you just have to find, he had 21 points also. And maybe you have to find, you just got to find some contrarian pieces in there, right? Because McCaffrey, Tutu, that's all. And you can even go Puka. Like, that's the thing. You could do it. Like, the guy had 15 targets. Like, that's nothing to write home. That's nothing to joke at. You could do this. These are your two chalk pieces, though, at that point. McCaffrey's going to be one of the highest owned running backs on the slate. Puka's going to be one of the highest owned receivers on the slate. Purdy won't have that much ownership. Kittle won't have that much ownership. So just from here, you just have to be as contrarian as you want to, as you possibly can. That's really the key here.
Okay, I personally, this is a guy, I just feel like his name is always next to chalk, but maybe he left a sour taste in people's mouth last week. Chalker? Is he going to be chalk yet again?
Like mid-tier. I think he was like 12% early, which is not terrible. He's right now coming through as our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9th highest. So we got, second tier of ownership. I don't hate that. He was very clearly in that RB1 role. So you can go there. We're just going to have to find some very low owned receivers coming up. I'm curious on? Let's see.
What are you curious on?
Yeah, this is a guy I like. Actually, this is my Men's Warehouse pick of the week. I want to make it Jamar Chase, but I think he's going to be incredibly highly owned. One of these guys is going off. Even if this game is pure crust as you think. We're looking at 6.6% first ownership run on T. Higgins. Still at 8 targets. Pure bounce back spot. And the mid-tier price is what you're looking for. So you get mid-tier price, you get ownership discount, you get bounce back spot. You get it with the whole team, but in this particular lineup, we probably can't afford Jamar Chase's chalk or price. So Higgins would be a guy that I like in this lineup. Probably my men's warehouse pick of the week there for you.
Okay, if you don't mind, just so I can see how much we have, do my favorite and just throw in one of the defenses we can adjust. Just put the Jets.
That's a good one.
Okay, so now we're looking at what, roughly 5,000 per player?
Yep.
Okay, I have a brutal question to ask you. Yeah, yes, but he probably will be owned, right?
No, we got to go with our guy Tony, right? We got to get a piece of that game.
Yes, we do, and that leaves us with 57. Does that give us one of the dinky other receivers on Jacksonville?
You would be able to get Zay Jones. You'd be able to get Christian Kirk actually in the bounce back spot as well. So yeah, you get both guys there. Yep. There you go.
Okay, and then obviously, we could adjust from there. And I agree with your T. Higgins pick. If you need a men's warehouse pick of the week from me, I just have always believed that it sucks that he's chalky. I'm gonna combat that he's chalk because I know how to put on my lids blank hat. And anybody who watched week 1, I watched the games with chalk people. And do you want to know what they all said? Brandon Ayuk, he's the star of the Niners. He's the true wide receiver 1. And if all the chalk people said that, then the chalk people, Mr. Chalk himself, Joe Blow Public said, I can't take Ayuk. Even he knew he's chalk. That's how chalk he is. So I'm going to have to combat those early numbers. I really think that Samuel, who didn't have a good year last year and then didn't have a big week 1, I do not foresee him being chalk. And if that is the case, I'm men's warehouse picking of the week. Him? No, he is my men's warehouse pick of the week. Shanahan has always utilized him in a perfect fashion against, you have to see his numbers versus the Rams. He murders them, and I'm looking for that to continue in this game. I'm going to take Deebo Samuel a week after everyone thinks Ayuk is just a top 4 wide receiver, just like Chase Claypool claimed he was a top 2 wide receiver, and now there's Twitter compilations of how he never tries. I'm going to go with Deebo Samuel as my men's warehouse pick of the week.
I like the way you look. I guarantee it.
Great pick of Gio Bernard in there. Hit that again.
I like the way you look. I guarantee it.
5,400.
Gio with the mustache. Long way to go. Long way to go until ownership is finalized here.
All right, so that's what we got for you this week. There are a lot of options. There's premier quarterbacks, tons of stacks available. Although, I'm going to be playing Purdy, something tells me one of the big dogs is hitting that millionaire this week, whether it's Mahomes. Too many of them had bad weeks to not want to fully go off this week. So make sure you have your premier ones in there if you can. If you're a Charlie bucket better and you got one ticket, good luck for you because it's not going to be an easy one. But thank you guys for coming back once again. What?
Going through this, I think it's a fun slate. Actually, I was skeptical with the large slate, but you have all these expensive quarterbacks, fun bounce back spots, narratives. Week 2 is a wonky week in its own right. People overreact. That's where we kind of take advantage of our edge. I'm excited to play, especially after not playing last week. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure I'll come back next week and fall flat on my face. But now that we went through the slate like this, I think it's a fun one.
It's tough, man. There's just way too many combinations out there. I'm gonna sound like a broken record. Just show me the buys and I'll show you a good time. All right, everyone. We'll be back with you next week. Good luck to you. Better luck to me. And I don't know, Gary, you got anything to say? I like the way you look. I guarantee it. That guy's got some.
I guarantee it. Yeah.
All right, everybody, take it easy. Thanks for coming back.
NP magazine subscription. It's fucking Cyborg. Read it. I want NP magazine subscription. As Cyborg. As I want NP magazine subscription. As Cyborg. Pick up the fucking chalk.